Hello and welcome back to the Fixing Football podcast. I'm Martin Naylor and tonight I'm joined with Scott Naylor and Liam O'Meara and we're going to talk about football and fix some stuff, hopefully. Boys, how are we? Welcome.
Hello.
Good evening.
Good. Yeah, there we go. Everyone at once.
Right. Yeah.
No, it's fine.
It's too cold and it's Monday. No one's switched on.
It is cold. Speaking of cold plunge update. I'm absolutely smashing it.
Fucking hell.
I love that thing. Feel great. And if anyone wants to join in the fun, I have a discount code. It will be in the link of the video. The friends at Lumi reached out, and they're very happy with my progress. So just got one of these.
Do you realise what now. You're going to say? You do realise what it sounds like when you say I'm cold plunging, joining the fun? Sounds a bit.
Sounds a bit what? What are you trying to say?
I think you need to clarify that you're not trying to take a bath with the listeners. You are trying to get them to get their own plunge bucket.
As one solid unit of cold plungers, yes, I am. I want everyone to bathe together, just not at the same time. Do it on your own in your own space.
Like those old school football baths that they'd have, like when they won in the FA Cup in the 80s, and they'd all get in a
jump in the same tub.
Yeah.
It's that sort of vibe, but a lot more solitary.
To be fair, you've been doing it now for what? 3-4 weeks, is it?
22 days.
There you go. And you're obviously feeling quite well. Your immune system's up, unlike Luke, who's off sick again. So, maybe there is something in it for the listeners.
I'm not convinced Luke's sick, to be fair. It's, but we'll get onto that another time. So, we've had a fun weekend of Premier League football. The second half of the winter break stuff has completed, and now this week we'll be on to an FA Cup weekend. So I feel like, personally, Arsenal have had just loads of time in between matches, which is bumming me out. But it's our fault for going out of the FA Cup, I guess. Liam, let's start with Bolton this week. Wasn't a good week for you guys.
No, 2 losses in a week. So that's as bad as it could have got, in essence. No surprises to go out against Luton, I suppose. We put up a good game, I thought. Good cup game. They played a very strong team, actually, so it's quite good to watch them, and see what they're about. I feel like we gave as good as we got. They were definitely the dominant side, and Ross Bartley looked $1 million in the flesh, to be honest. He was a brilliant player, as was Chong, the United loanee. Really, really good performance. So, yeah, he's got a decent career ahead of him, I think, if he maintains sort of... It looks like he's had a really good loan, to be fair.
Yeah.
He's doing well there. So, yeah, they were good. Bolton... And then the disappointing result was Saturday's result, which I think a lot of that was down to we've now got injuries. We've sustained little knocks.
1-0 at home to Leyton Orient. Is that right?
Away.
It was away, sorry.
It was away, but we've got injuries, and both of them were fullbacks that we had unavailable. So, So, I mean, obviously our right back was there, but our right inside back was away on international duty. So the possession system kept breaking down. So we were there to be shot at, I think. But hopefully we can bounce back tomorrow, i.e. Tuesday night, at the game against Cheltenham. But we've got a lot of games to make up. I think we're playing 7 of the next 8 Tuesdays. So that gives you an idea.
You're like 3 games behind Portsmouth, aren't you?
Yes, and we'll be having a away cup game in the Bristol Street Motors Trophy, as it's called now, next Tuesday away at Blackpool, which I'm hoping to get a ticket for when they go on sale this week. So I'll book the evening off work for that, so that'll be quite good. But yeah, I'm just going to get back on the horse and ride it back to promotion now, mine.
That's the plan. Is there any sort of transfer news for Bolton? No, we're getting to the last...
Quiet.
It's super quiet everywhere, I guess.
It's quite quiet. We are linked massively with Niall Ennis from Blackburn on loan, who played at Plymouth last year, was part of their promotion side. Forward, good player for a bit of cover, because we have lost Dan and Lunderley for a large portion of the season. And I don't think there's an awful lot of faith in Cameron Jerome as a backup striker, because it does like to rotate. It does like to sub both his strikers. He's front 2 at 60th minute. So I think he wants fresher legs up there. So there's that. There's some other ones, but there's not much weight behind them at the moment. So that's kind of it. And no sign of a striker yet at Arsenal, Martin.
No, and I don't see one happening. There's a couple been linked. Obviously, everyone's talking about Tony. I don't see it happening. I don't see it happening. And yeah, like I've said before, we've said this on a few episodes now, but I'm not going to turn my nose up at him. I don't think he's right for us, although I do rate him. I just don't see it fits. I know other people do. I would prefer a shorter term option while we find the right person. If we're going to look for someone, if we're going to spend 100 million, I don't see that. If people are claiming that Tony is a better option than Jesus as our number 9, which he probably is, but he's not £100 million better.
Even if you wait, though, I think even if you wait, there's just who are you waiting for? There's not even anyone that you can say is
I don't know
on the cusp and maybe getting to there. It's such a bleak market at the moment.
It is, and everyone's got the FFP Grim Reaper on their backs, just waiting to pounce, and I think it's running people scared. They don't want to push it, because if you would be gambling on your finishing position and how potentially well we could do in Europe. We're only, we're 90 minutes away from losing out on, millions of pounds, or gaining it, and it's going to turn into a gamble. So I don't know at the moment. I don't really see much action happening at Arsenal, other than maybe 1 or 2 out, depending if we got a good offer in for someone like Nketiah. I'd be interested to see what would happen if we got a good offer in for Emil Smith-Rowe, although I wouldn't like that to happen. I do want him to stay, but it would be interesting to see what does happen in that case. So, what about Chelsea? Go on, Liam.
Just on that, I would like to see Emil Smith-Rowe go, and you can even put something like a buyback on it. Why not? Or a sell-on fee. That type of move. Like, I think he needs it, and I think you need it as well, because the FFP benefit of doing that may get you in the market for a striker. If not now, you're probably going to need one in the summer. And I'm thinking someone like Lautaro Martinez sort of fits that mold of workhorse striker that you probably want, that links the play. You're going to need that, whether you need it now or the summer, and that type of sale can have a real big impact on it.
Yeah, maybe you're right. I just don't know who is out there at the moment. Strikers are so hard to come by.
On Lautaro Martinez, I think he's kind of what you need Gabriel Jesus to be. He's a bit compact, he's small, he can link up the play, but he's absolutely ruthless in front of goal. I think he's excellent. He would be probably one of the few in that top striker 100 million quid range, I think.
What about Chelsea then? Is there any movement? I think we've heard rumours about Gallagher again.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, because that, from a strictly financial standpoint, the Gallagher deal makes almost too much sense to not do. There's talk of, why sell him to Tottenham or whoever, Tottenham's like the big rumoured club. And to be quite honest, history's shown me that any player who is going to go to Spurs, either from us or over us, is not a player that we should be losing any sleep about. I think in years gone by, the sale of Conor Gallagher would have outraged absolutely nobody, because as much as I like him, he isn't ever going to be a world-class player that Chelsea need. So if you can financially benefit from him, and that leads to the signing of a Victor Osimhen or someone of that nature, I don't think many Chelsea fans would have a problem. I guess some Chelsea fans would have an issue with selling him to Spurs, but in the grand scheme, I think it makes too much sense on the books to not do it. We could get 50 million straight profit, and we, like you said, with FFP breathing down everyone's necks, we kind of need it. But we're probably in the same boat that you guys are with. We need a striker. I think Victor Osimhen will happen in the summer. It seems like on the grapevine, where his preferred destination, it sounds like Didier Drogba's working overtime at AFCON, playing the agent role to try and get him to us. And I think as is the case with a lot of African players, he's been following Chelsea for a lot of his life. And we're reaping some benefits now of our past 20 years of success of players growing up, seeing us win everything. They want to come to us. But yeah, I think it's going to be quite one. I think there's some loanees returning. Diego Moreira's come back from Lyon. half these players you guys probably never even heard of.
Yeah, these are sticker book fillers. These, I don't know.
Yeah. Andre Santos has come back from loan. Cesare Casadei's come back from Leicester, which I thought was interesting because he was doing quite well there. But yeah, I think our loan system is a bit shit because most of the players we've sent out are now back, and most of them can't go on another loan. So, fuck knows. But yeah, it's going to be a quiet January for us, I think.
Yeah, just on that, Scott, you raise an interesting point. It's something I thought about before, but until you said it out loud, I've not really thought about it a lot, or thought to say it out loud. But I find sometimes there's quite a lot of this now with players that really want to play for Chelsea. And I wouldn't say I struggle to understand why, because obviously Chelsea are, like you said, the last 15, 20 years, they've won it all. But I found Moises Caicedo, obviously South American, but I found that mad, the fact that he turned down Liverpool. I still find, and I get that he was a Chelsea fan, but I must admit, I found that insane, really. I suppose it does show what Chelsea have achieved in the last sort of 15 years, that you would turn down what I think is probably historically the second, if not the biggest club in British history, which is Liverpool. But I still found that interesting, really.
Yeah, it's a weird dynamic, and I think it goes to show there's so much that goes into these things. Yet you've got the heritage of Liverpool, which is the heritage of Liverpool, a thing in Ecuador. I don't know, but if you're growing up if you're in your early 20s now, you've seen Liverpool do very little by comparison to Chelsea, and it's like we all grew up watching Man United dominate. But if we'd have grown up, if we'd have been born 10, 15 years earlier, we wouldn't have seen that. We'd have seen a different version of events play out. So, and it's that, and it's what these players get sold, whether it's a Chelsea press brief to say this, but every signing that we brought in talk about how exciting the project is, what they see for the vision of the future of Chelsea. So you don't know what these players are getting told. And a players look at it thinking, right, okay, Liverpool now under Klopp's nice and exciting to play for, but he's been there for 7 years. How long will I get to play under Klopp? Is he going to be on the way out in a couple of years? There's so much that goes into it. But yeah, I mean, on paper, you would almost think it's a no-brainer. But for someone in their early 20s, Chelsea are the team that's been doing it all. So
there's also the draw of London, which is quite big, especially for foreign nationals coming in as well. They know London and the rest of England. They don't know that the other cities may be slightly comparable, but yeah, that's always been one.
Yeah, just on that as well, before we move on, Scott, you reminded me when you say, like, reason to join. I remember what Arthur Ganua said when he signed for Bolton. Like, he asked him straight up, what was the main reason because Bolton? And his answer was, well, it's down the road from where I live. That was his answer straight up. So, I suppose there's different reasons for joining clubs.
I always remember the Rivaldo story in the Allardyce era. And for those who don't know, when Rivaldo was on his way to Manchester Airport, or did he arrive here? Did he arrive at Manchester Airport?
I believe. I mean, I'm the spot with something that it happened, but I believe he spent a night in a hotel. Rivaldo.
Yeah, and then found out that it was Bolton Wanderers, and he just heard that he was going to Manchester, and that was it. So yeah, it reminded me of that. Then, Scott, you mentioned Liverpool a second ago, and I wanted to get onto them because they're dread to say high flying. They're sort of becoming, if not already, are the title favourites.
Yeah.
I just want to go over sort of their run of form recently. They haven't had the same break that has been afforded to other clubs. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we, handed them the FA Cup tie. We lost on purpose just so we could have a bit of a break, really.
How's that working out for you?
It worked out all right this weekend. We'll see how it goes. But, yeah, I mean, they've got a lot of injuries, but they are looking really good. I want to start with you, and then I know Liam's got some points to make. But what are you making of Liverpool right now? Are they the real deal? Do you think it's going to go all the way? Right, sorry, we're going to cut that short. We're having some technical issues, so we're going to have a little break now, and then we're going to come back in a few minutes and catch up with all things FFP and Liverpool. And we're back. We've had a little break. We have all rebooted. We've re-kicked off everything. we're all ready to go. I want to jump back into Liverpool right quick. Liam, I'll start with you this time. let's just. I want to. Are they the real deal? Let us know what are your thoughts on Liverpool at the moment.
They're a very good team. And I think the strength in depth, particularly from their younger players, is something to really sort of admire. Really, when you look at players like Curtis Jones, who's made himself into a really important player in that team, someone who all the stats suggest is absolutely vital to how they play. And you look at people like Harvey Elliott ready to come in, and even Conor Bradley, who's stepped up for Trent Alexander-Arnold, someone who was on loan at Bolton last year and did really well. So they've just got this strength in depth that they've not even had to go out and buy.
They've got Kwanzaa who's coming as well, and Owen Beck made his debut as well this week. There's a few, made the debuts for them this season that, they're starting to see the benefits of a decent academy over there.
And even the young, I can't remember what he's called off the top of my head now, but the young winger that they got from Celtic, is it Doak?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, he looks a prospect as well. So they've got real talent, sort of, that they're not having to go out and buy, which is absolutely priceless when they've had these injuries, and other teams would probably falter, but they're smashing an informed Bournemouth side 4-0 away.
I know I had Bournemouth to win that as well. There was more hope than head. Do you have? Are they your title favourites right now?
No, probably not. Only just because it's impossible to look past City. If it wasn't Man City who have won 3 in a row, I would probably say yeah. But I struggle to look past City, particularly with Kevin De Bruyne back now. So I don't know what do you think, Martin? You're probably going to say Arsenal, but what do you?
Yeah, Arsenal are favourites.
What do you really think?
I really think we're going to win the league, but Liverpool have maintained a lot of form this season. It's surprising me that they're top. It's surprising me, based on my opinions going into the season. Doesn't surprise me Liverpool doing well, and like we spoke about before, it's all down to Klopp really. Scott, do you make Liverpool title favourites?
No, still think City are the favourites. Think, like Liam said, with Bruyne returning and Haaland back eventually. Not sure what the timeline is on him. He seems to have been gone for ages, but when he's back, I mean, he's still top scorer, I think. So he's not kicked a ball in fucking months, but he's still up there, and we can only assume that that's going to continue when he comes back. So I think Liverpool. I think their lack of quality in midfield is going to tell eventually. I think that's all coaching. I think in individual moments they're going to struggle. The one thing they do have, other than in midfield, is experience in really key areas of the field. In the final third, Mo Salah is an absolute machine. They've got Van Dijk at the back, who's managed to stay fit and forming quite well. And they've got Alisson, who's probably the best goalkeeper on the planet. So I think in all those key positions where they need leadership and need people who've been there and done it, they've got the kind of players who can step up in big moments. So I think they'll come second, but I think City will be again too powerful for everybody, which is a shame.
Big game in a couple of weeks is Liverpool come to the Emirates. So
it's coming up soon, isn't it?
It's going to be massive, and I think it'll either make us solid contenders in the running, or it will take us out of the race completely at that point. So interested to see. I don't want to pin all my hopes on one game because you see how things can turn, but that's what it's looking like at the moment. So I want to go on to the big story that came out last week. It broke sort of right before the podcast last week, so we didn't have time to do any reading or research into the actual charges. So Liam, we'll start with you because you've probably done more reading than all of us put together. I'll include Luke in that. So it's the FFP charges, and I know you're going to correct me already, against Everton and Forest that have came up. So I've seen a lot of things about Everton having 2 charges in one season. First of all, just fill in some blanks for me. What's going on with these charges? You can start wherever you want, and I'll let you take the reins here, and we'll fill in the gaps when we can.
Perfect. Well, I will start by correcting you. So this isn't actually FFP. That is European football's version of what is PSR, which is the Premier League's version, and it's called the Profit and Sustainability Rules, which I would get used to saying, because I think, something we talked about earlier in the podcast, I think it's becoming a lot more prevalent now. So, I mean, where to start? So we'll start with Everton, and why are they being charged for the same thing? And the answer is they're not, theoretically. So you have a 3-year running period that you are essentially judged on. And this is now a second offence. So the one that we charged with previously is a first offence. What they're charged with a second offence for is a new year. So they're submitting their new accounts for the end of the last calendar year. And very similarly for Nottingham Forest, they've essentially been charged for that second period that Everton have been. So they're in line with each other. As for why they're in the same season, I actually don't know why the timing has worked out that way. I'll be completely open with you.
I think it's due to when you submit the books, that it's just because the submitting of the books, as in the footballing financial year, doesn't correlate with the footballing season. It more correlates with the calendar year. So I think that's where confusion's been. I think Everton's charges relate to, if I'm not wrong, to do with interest payments on the stadium and the way that they're being financed.
Yes, they essentially incorrectly reported them, I believe. So they reported them as part of deductibles when they do not count as deductibles on there. So they've gone over by quite some margin, which is why they were so heavily punished the first time. So we'll see what happens there. And Nottingham Forest is a little bit more complex. They aren't hugely over it. And what's being reported is that the sale of Brennan Johnson was quite critical in terms of them essentially being able to comply. So what's being reported is had they sold Brennan Johnson to, I think it was Brighton, may have been Brentford.
But I think it was Brentford, yeah.
Yeah, one of the teams that loves making money on players. Looked to purchase Brennan Johnson for 30 million in June, which, had that transfer gone through at that stage, would have meant that they would have complied. However, by selling him in August at 46 million to Spurs, meant that they had failed because that goes on next year's books.
Yeah.
Now, Nottingham Forest are looking for some leniency, I believe, on that, but I think that would be fundamentally unfair, because what you're essentially looking there is at the 36th month of a 36-month period, not the previous 35. And there will be clubs that have maybe had to sell players that they don't want to sell because they've put themselves in a difficult position with FFP. So I think that if that is the reason, and obviously we're only hearing reports that are being leaked favourably by whoever they would want to. If that is the reason, then I think they should have the book thrown at them. I think they had the opportunity to comply and chose not to do it. That is the rules are there for a reason. But yeah, it's all very complex, and I obviously want to get your guys' view first of all on that, if that is part of it.
So what is the book? Is the book the same as what Everton got this season with the 10 points? It's one charge. They've brought the rules. It's 10 points. That's the precedent set.
No, well, this is very interesting actually, because there is no set guidelines, and the Premier League, I believe, actually had a vote at the end of last season on whether to actually have fixed guidelines in what these punishments would be, but voted against that, because that's what needs to be remembered when you're going through all this, is that this idea of breaking the Premier League rules, it is the Premier League clubs that set these rules. The Premier League isn't the FA. So
the Premier League is the sum of all the parts. It's 20 clubs. They all have a vote. It's 14 have to pass. Everyone knows that. But then people see the Premier League as this biased, extraterrestrial body that has some sort of leniency towards some clubs, the big six, as people like to say, when it's got to be 14 clubs to pass anything.
Exactly. For that reason. So we're like to stop the big six from having that monopoly. So what's interesting is obviously the clubs decided not to do that, because what they wanted was to keep things with an independent panel to look at the whole picture on its merit about so they were able to take views on things like mitigating circumstances, and it kept an element of flexibility. But the issue now is that obviously a lot of people are decrying the fact that they don't know what's going to happen to Forest and they don't know what's going to happen to Everton. And just because Everton got 10 points for that offence earlier in this season, doesn't mean anything, really, because this is going to be looked at in its own complete independent merit.
Yeah.
And the word precedent doesn't really apply, even though that is what's being bandied around. There is no precedent because every case is going to be looked at individually.
Scott, what are your thoughts on, first of all, your initial thoughts on the charges given, the clubs involved, and then, your own standings, Chelsea, no strangers to the odd rule break here and there.
Alleged rule breaks. Some of them proven, but mostly alleged. I think the tricky thing here is, Everton, first and foremost, my thoughts on Everton, I'm not surprised. Their finances have been circling the drain for a long time. So he's hardly surprised to see this coming. Forest is a little bit of a tricky one because they were put in positions where they had to spend a lot of money to even have a squad available to be in the Premier League. It does get a bit murky with the fact that 2 of those years they've been charged over aren't under Premier League, with Premier League financial loss restrictions. It's with the Football League, so they're allowed to lose less. I think it's about 40 million quid less than Everton were allowed to lose. I think that with this whole thing, what Liam said was absolutely spot on about that. They've been trying to say that the sale of Brennan Johnson for a higher value was done. I think their exact quote was done in the spirit of FFP, or in the spirit of profit and sustainability, which isn't complying with profit and sustainability. Their whole defense is going to be built around this, and I think it's extremely flimsy. And I think both clubs have been extremely naive in how they've gone about this, and this will have been on the forecast for a long time that this was going to be a problem, with very little in the way of massive windfalls incoming. Neither club had really extremely promising players. Neither club was going to be on course to win a cup that would have provided a cash injection. So it's just down to poor management from both clubs, and I don't really think both sets of fans are going to have their opinions and they're going to complain about it and they're not going to be happy. But if they'd stay compliant within the rules, then they wouldn't be in this position. So I don't really think there's going to be a lot of sympathy for either club, to be honest. You mentioned Chelsea there in that question as well. We've been all the clubs get reviewed, and Chelsea have been deemed in the clear despite the spend that we've had. And it goes to show that we've been extremely effective in sales as well. And we've absolutely rinsed the shit out of the amortization loophole, which has most certainly helped us in that. But I do think we're going to have to be very careful. So, yeah, I don't know what you guys think, but I've got very little sympathy for both clubs involved.
Yeah, same. I think at the moment it looks like the Premier League are right on top of this in terms of any breaches, and it just seems like as soon as these charges are coming up, that these are the facts. Everyone's got them. Everyone's got the books, and they can publish them. They can fight the case all they want, but I don't think they've got a leg to stand on really. And it's going to be down to, like Liam said, an independent panel to decide their fate, really. I do think 10 points is going to be a maximum we're ever going to see per charge, I want to add. So, on that front, I don't know how each club are going to be, if they're going to be super worried about another 10 points, just given the quality at the bottom of the league this season. So, maybe they're hoping that these come in sooner rather than later, these charges, and they don't drag on further. I did hear a report, I think it was in The Athletic, that Chelsea and Arsenal are 2 clubs who are they're not under any investigations in terms of potential charges, but they are very close in terms of the FFP limit for spend and obviously what you're allowed to lose per year. So that'll be something to keep our eye on. Hopefully nothing to worry about too much. Liam, I want to go on to a subject that's come up in relation to this, but Newcastle are being told, or it's seemingly that they are looking to have to sell in order to comply with FFP, with PSR. Was that right?
PSR.
So, what do you make of that, given the boundless riches that they have in the bank? Is that fair that someone who has, and fight whichever side of this you want, but is it fair that someone who has unlimited money, Newcastle aren't going bust anytime soon, so FFP, the financial fair play rules, barely apply to Newcastle because they are there in order to stop a club going out of business, which they haven't done under Mike Ashley for all these years. He kept them afloat, obviously going through bad times on the pitch, but financially they've been sound. But a club like Newcastle have unlimited wealth and they ain't going anywhere. So is it fair that they play by the same rules?
This is a very good question. It's a very nuanced question as well, because theoretically, I do agree with the idea that it does hold some clubs back from essentially disruption, and you should never really have, in a free market economy, you shouldn't really have barriers to entry in any market, especially in the same competition. I do agree with that concept. But then you've also got on the other side is that this is exactly why owners like Newcastle shouldn't own football clubs, because it bends the whole thing out of complete.
Yeah, there's no proportion to it at all.
Yeah, exactly. So then you're having to like completely rewrite the rule book because of Newcastle. Is it right that Newcastle have to look at selling someone like maybe Lewis Miley to essentially make sure that they can continue their growth path? Probably not. Like, really. It probably isn't fair. But, as many people in Saudi Arabia probably understand, life isn't fair, is it? So, sorry, Newcastle, you might have to apply to the rules that you've signed up to compete in. I'm very sorry for you. But, yeah, I don't really sympathise, to be honest. But there is an argument that it does stop clubs entering the elite. And, when you look at the alleged charges at Manchester City, is that a symptom of them, the barriers of entry? Like the fact that they've had to essentially, allegedly do what they've done to try and get to the top table, and they maybe would have never been able to do it had they not done it. And I think there is potentially an argument for that. But again, that's why people who own Man City shouldn't own football clubs again. So, yeah. I think I can see both sides of the argument, but I know which side I land on. Don't know what you guys think.
It makes an interesting, I guess, so let's say, for argument's sake, it's the worst case scenario for Man City, and they become some sort of weird case study for, this is how you can't do it. It's almost like they set the example. It then raises a question of how does anybody else then break into, how does anybody else bar unearthing some absolute superstar from out of nowhere? Someone uncovers the next Messi or Ronaldo in their academy just by chance, and they shoot them to the top. It's how does anybody else then do it? If City have had to go to those lengths just to, like you say, get a seat at the table, what does that? It's a bit grim. It's grim reading for anybody who's got aspirations to start climbing up the table, because how else can it be done?
I guess that's the main argument. But again, these rules aren't set by Man United, Liverpool, and Arsenal. It takes almost a full table of people to suggest.
I agree.
This is the right way to do it.
Yeah,
it's not just set by the old heads, and that's the way it goes. It
is worth pointing out that it is exactly to stop Man City and Newcastle that these rules exist. So
yeah.
it's almost weird to turn around and say, well, it's unfair on them, because that's why it came in, essentially, because of PSG and City at the time, and maybe Malaga to an extent, and a bit Chelsea, but not as much. But these sorts of investments into clubs, that's why it was brought in. And I think there was a flavour for it, because there is an issue with a single owner who has the best intentions and then pulls out. We've talked about this before. Something that we really struggled with at Bolton. But you're right in what you said at the start, that that's not what this is at the top of the table. So there probably needs to be an adjustment of the acceptable losses, I think. Maybe over a longer period of time to allow that sustain. I don't know. But the problem is the rules are the rules now. So if you brought the rules now, then you can't just change the rules in the past to make that you passed the rules. So if
Yeah,
you broke the rules, you broke the rules.
I agree. I just want to try and clarify something. It's been one of the... I DJ a lot in Liverpool, so I've had a chat with quite a few people this week, and the main thing on everyone's lips is that, why are Everton being done again? City have still got all these charges still. Lee, do you want to take this, or I can fill in some gaps? But why is it different? Just a brief outline.
It isn't different. It's just a lot bigger.
Yeah, it's just the size of each
scale
one.
of the problems just it's on another level, isn't it?
Yes, and I think that is it in a nutshell. And I think, there maybe is an element of the fact that City obviously went up against UEFA with it on FFP, and obviously, they won that case when, again, I don't want to obviously misquote, but, it looked like a technicality from the outside looking. That's my view, not the view of anyone or the official. What definitely happened, that's my view. But maybe there is an element of the Premier League are making sure that they've got everything. And also, by the way, it sounds from the outside that Everton and Nottingham Forest have cooperated with the investigations.
Yeah.
Whereas that helps, doesn't it? If you ask for something and someone gives it to you, that is quicker than, trying to do it yourself. So there is probably that element to it as well. Have I missed anything?
Yeah, just the bit of reading and research that we've done prior to this, that Everton and Nottingham Forest case and Everton's previous ones are all due to the books submitted, whereas the Man City charges are due to sort of fraudulent, purposefully misleading books and the accounting that's been done over financing certain players and managers and anything else that goes along in Man City HQ. Whether they're proved right or Man City can prove their innocence, we'll wait and see. It's going to be a long old road still.
I think it's one of those situations where if Man City's legal team has looked at this and gone, we're up shit creek here. We've pushed our luck and this is us. Their instructions would have been tie this up in as many legal knots as you possibly can and kick that can as far down the road as humanly possible. These guys can afford the best lawyers on the planet. So I think that's another reason why this could have been taking so long, is that if on the off chance there is a legitimate case to answer, their lawyers will be under I believe, in my opinion, will be under very clear instructions to delay this as long as humanly possible.
Yeah, there's something to be said for if you've not done anything wrong, then you should be able to prove that.
Yeah, and you would cooperate. You would just like, here's all the evidence that I'm innocent. But if you're trying to find, if you need to look for that, then it's a different case, isn't it?
Like I say, these are all alleged so far, and I don't want to predict. I don't want to predict what's going to happen to City should the Premier League find even half of these charges to be correct. So I think we're in for a long old shit show with that one. So I think we'll leave it there. That's we've covered a lot of ground here. FFP is here to stay. It seems like the Premier League are on top of it. So we'll wait and see. I did want to start something this week. I've got question time. Martin's question time this week. I'm going to pass it around the group, so everyone's going to get a turn, and the answers will be given out at the start of each episode. So this is my leaving question for you all, and take it with you. So we spoke about the bottom of the table this week. But my question to you and the viewers, so please comment your answers below, or in the chat, or in the comments, or DM Liam as much as you want. You can find him on Twitter. What is the lowest amount of points to be scored in the Premier League that has kept a team up? What is the lowest amount of points that have been done, that have been taken, that have kept a team up? We all know about the famous got to get to 40 points mark, so I'll let you do your research or just have a guess. It's bad quiz etiquette to cheat, so if you don't know it, don't answer. And if you do know it, please do comment below, let us know, get in touch. And thank you everyone for tuning in. Boys, thank you very much. You can find all the information where you can comment at www.fixingfootballpodcast.com, and you'll find everything there. And we will catch you all next week. Thanks a lot, guys.
Cheers, everyone.
Goodbye.